Well, this is a good news week in San Francisco. I just finished signing 12 pieces of legislation, literally 12 pieces of legislation associated with the Candlestick Bayview Hunters Point Shipyard development project that has worked its way through at least 17 years, some 250 community events through CACs and PACs, through committee hearings, through board hearings, through all kinds of reviews, state, federal, and local review, and finally made its way to my desk in these 12 pieces of legislation that codify that extraordinary work. In many respects, that work goes back to 1974 when the Navy decided to pull away from the shipyard. It wasn't until 2004, some 30 years later, that we transferred the first parcel, Parcel A, for development to a private developer to begin the process of revitalizing the old shipyard. But today, we take it to a whole new level. We just agreed to a framework that will develop some 10,500 units of new housing, 32% of them below market. We'll provide a framework for over 300 acres of parks and open space, a new bay trail that will connect the community and the waterfront. The opportunity to revitalize the old Alice Griffin public housing site, originally known as Double Rock, build it one-to-one replacement with a world-class mixed-use housing development. The opportunity to put over 900,000 square feet of new retail down at the shipyard and Candlestick site, in addition to providing a framework for a new arena, some 10,000 seat venue, as well as 69,000 seat new stadium for what we hope is the 49ers, and provide for an opportunity to build a new hotel out there, in addition to over 2.5 million, in fact, a little bit north of 2.5 million square feet of research and development space for the green tech sector. The idea is to anchor this area with the new UN Global Compact Center, which we announced a number of months ago with Gavin Power, and to provide the catalyst, as UCSF provided the catalyst for Mission Bay, to provide the catalyst for a green tech revolution, not only for our city, for the region, but for the entire state and country, by rezoning this area for the jobs of the future, which are the jobs in the new sustainable economy. Over $83 million as well was set aside for community benefits. And I want to just thank Supervisor David Chu, President Chu, and the rest of the Board of Supervisors that stood strong to vote for this project, led by incredible work and faith and constancy and devotion for literally probably half her life, and that's Sophie Maxwell, that deserves so much praise and so much credit for stewarding this process along for all of these years. But that $83 million will go to workforce training, down payment assistance loans, commitment to health center out in the southeast sector, all kinds of commitments that now are codified in this legislation. Commitments that are real and commitments that are made with labor that were part of this project. Thanks to Tim Polson and Mike Casey and the entire Labor Council, Mike Terrio and the building trades, Manny Flores, for all their great work, to community leaders like Angelo King and Aurelius Walker, Reverend Brown, and all our faith-based leaders that made this possible, Veronica Honeycutt. I can honestly go on, and if I forgot you, it's not intentional, it's just a limited amount of time. Congratulations for a job well done, and at the end of the day, the biggest hats off to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senator Dianne Feinstein. Since I've been mayor, $519 million we've drawn down from the federal government to clean up the shipyard from toxics, to deal with the prostate cancer rates, the cervical cancer rates, the breast cancer rates, and the asthma rates that are 2 to 4 times the state and federal average, to get serious about that cleanup. Over $714 million has been drawn down for the federal government. Just again, 519 in the last number of years. They deserve tremendous credit for making that happen. And finally, to the great Michael Cohen, the head of the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development. It simply could not have happened without Michael Cohen and his ability to pull people together in the private sector, the public sector, the federal and the state supervisors that have come and gone to help present the proposition, Prop G, to the ballot and to get the voters to approve that, to help us in his private time, his spare time, and to help us with the old board to get the framework, the conceptual agreement, and with this new board to get the final documents done. A really proud moment in a proud history that we have promoted and promised for so many generations out in the Southeast sector that got stopped and basically got interrupted by the exodus of the Navy and what they left behind in this old brownfields. Now that promise to promote a greener, more sustainable future is upon us. 10,000 plus direct jobs, 13 plus thousand indirect jobs, $11 billion increase in the property tax base, $6.4 to $6.6 billion of gross city product. I can go on and on with these stats, but at the end of the day, it's about human beings. It's about real people's lives, and we hope by end of 2011, maybe early part of 2012, when the financing takes shape and the building permits are finally approved, that we're going to start seeing real progress and real projects take shape out in the Southeast sector. And one final thing, we protected the artist colony out there in the Southeast sector. This is another thing that I'm really proud of and very thankful that we were able to support, and we'll make sure no one is displaced and they'll have an opportunity to continue the great creative work that folks have been doing out there, our artists out in the Southeast sector for all these years. So that's the first thing, great news. Second good news is a balanced budget, $6.55 billion budget. We dealt with a $522.2 million shortfall, the biggest we had seen in our city's history, but we balanced the budget without raising taxes, without laying off police officers, without laying off firefighters, expanding universal health care, expanding universal preschool, finishing the commitment I made 5 years ago to do universal after school, investing an historic amount of money in our streets and roads, some $50 million to repave our streets. More streets will be repaved this year than in the last decade plus we've seen on any annual basis. We're fully funding our 10-year capital plan in this budget. This is a remarkable story, and I don't think this story is being told in other cities. In Oakland, laying off police officers, firefighters being laid off in San Jose, the state going through its own travails and challenges. Really a lot to be proud of. Thanks to Supervisor John Avalos, Chair of the Finance Committee. Thanks to David Chu, President of the Board, to all the members of the board that stepped up and stepped in and worked together collaboratively to get this budget passed. I'm really proud of it. Under difficult circumstances, unprecedented, we're able to pull this together, protect mental health services, substance abuse services, expand supportive housing for homeless. It's a remarkable budget, and it includes new programs, which in and of itself is a news story, most notably this kindergarten to college framework where Supervisor Bevan Dufty and Supervisor Campos worked so hard and steward through the board and got the support in this budget that allows us to do baby bonds to basically give entering kindergarten students a leg up by putting together a savings account where we can match that savings, so when they're ready to go to college or they're ready to look at a community college, a CSU, a private college, or a UC college, that they have the resources. This is the first city ever to do this. It's one of, I think, the most exciting projects in terms of creating a college-going culture. I've always believed that once a mind is stretched, it can never go back to its original form. And if you can create the expectation of a young child that they can actually go to college and that their support group, their friends, their family, their loved ones, their foster parents, their community leaders, their faith-based leaders will also share that same expectation, then everything is possible. And that's what this kindergarten to college really is promoting and what it's about. And I want to thank Maria Sue, Department of Children, Youth, and Family, for all her great work, and to the private sector, the folks at SF Earn, and Joyce Neustadt, an old policy director of mine who worked hard on this, and to the great work of my favorite member of the school board, my liaison to the school board, Hydra Mendoza, for just an outstanding job at getting this moving forward. A lot of good restorations, a lot of good work done collaboratively, and it's a budget we should be proud of. And by the way, thank you to labor. We wouldn't be here without labor. $250 million, just shy of $250 million of wage concessions. We simply could not have done this had that foundation not be laid. And I want to just thank every public employee union outside of our friends at TWU, with respect, truth is told, for stepping up to the plate and contributing. And you know, they did it with a backdrop that we now have the lowest number of city employees since 1998. And yet they still stepped up with wage concessions. And that is why we're able to keep the community clinics open and keep our libraries open and keep our other health clinics and the like open. It was because of public employees. So thank you. Job well done, and something that should not be lost on any citizen in the city as A lot of folks are beaten up on labor. We need to put our hat and tip it to our friends in labor that stepped up to the plate. Thank you, Tim Paulson, and thank you to the folks that came together with this, what we call PEC, this Public Employees Committee. They just did an extraordinary job, and again, I can't impress upon folks more what that job meant in terms of keeping our budget and making this budget whole. Final good news, we were able to announce this week a 61% restoration of those Muni service cuts. And I want to remind people, there would have been no cuts, there had been enhancements had it not been for the state budget cuts that took money away from Muni, and it not been for the Muni Drivers Union, TWU, that rejected 2 times, not once, wage concessions, where every other public employee gave back roughly 5%. These drivers took roughly a 6% increase. That pushed us back in terms of deficit and put us in a position where these service cuts were inevitable as a trade-off, for example, to increasing fares on seniors, youth, and disabled, which we did not want to do, or on the general riders, because we had already done that recently. So now with the 61% restoration, the light rail will be fully restored in terms of service hours. The OWL service and a lot of other community service will be restored. Some 178,000 hours of service will be restored, and puts us on a path, a commitment that is crystal clear to get 100% of these service cuts restored, certainly by this time next year. But we'll have a plan this December to get us there, and look at enhancing certain lines and looking at augmenting other lines. When I talk about service restoration, I'm not talking about having exactly the same service. We don't want to do that. That's why we did this transit effectiveness plan. We want to modernize this based on real data and real utilization patterns, and enhance lines where we know there's a deficiency, and look at making augmentation where there are not a lot of riders on some other lines. But we want to get those service hours fully restored, and that is a firm commitment of this administration, and I think any subsequent administration. Remember, Muni, as low as the bar is, had its highest on-time performance in this last fiscal year than it's ever had in its history, 75% in that last quarter. We're going to have new quarter numbers that come out, won't be as high as 75%, but will put us over the 4-quarter period at the highest on-time performance we've ever had in our history. And I know what you're thinking. Again, bar is low. We need to raise it. I was the author of Prop E, so I know intimately that the voters approved what we put together, which was an 85% stretch goal, and we won't stop until we get there. So that's the good news for the week. Not a bad week from my perspective. A lot to celebrate. Jobs and economic development, the fate and future with the biggest redevelopment project in our city's history, creating real opportunity for people in the Southeast sector and locking in local jobs, creating a budget that is the envy of other municipalities with a difficult backdrop in difficult circumstances, by working with labor, not imposing things upon labor, but working across the table through collective bargaining, and creating a framework where public transit riders can benefit from some good news finally as it relates to these difficult budgets, and provide a little bit of relief with those service cuts. So hopefully next week I'll have an equivalent amount of reasonably good news to report, but until then, have a great week.